Before I make more videos, I wanted to do a little small video just to introduce myself and to say why I want to do videos and why I'm a wizard and why that could help you. Just to start us off, my name is Jeffrey, or Jeff, not Jeremy. I'm 32 years old and I'm a doctor that has been working for 4 to 5 years in the psychiatric field. But most importantly, I am a patient myself, and I have suffered a large part of my life with depressions, anxiety, low self-esteem, worthiness issues, addictions, and a lot of other fun stuff that are associated with this. Because let's be honest, they're friends of each other. And actually studying medicine and psychiatry, or trying to, has been a big part, probably me trying to figure out myself what is going on, because along the way there were no satisfactory answers given. I was just very sensitive, and that was that. And I have never known really what the message was with that. I also took it a lot of times very negatively, which was not necessary, but that's not the point. So, and now that I've come a long way for myself, and I have to say I have healed a lot. Depressions are gone for 3-4 years now, and in a way that I do still experience maybe these symptoms, but I'm just very well at handling them right now. I've found ways for myself that do the trick really well, and I also found answers. I found answers that work and that fit in the whole puzzle, which makes me understand the world that I live in a lot better, and has made my future look a lot brighter. So my hope with the videos is merely to talk about very difficult subjects that I hope will help other people, and mostly by just sharing my personal experience and not my professional advice. There are dogs here. They are behind the fence. The fence is large enough. Good. And I do have a lot of personal experience, because I've searched for a long time for things that would work and help me feel better. Really, very simple. And I do really believe in the core. That's all any of us ever do, is try to feel good, feel better, get relief. That's all. The roads to there are long and winding sometimes, and very contradictory. And although I do believe in science, and it has taught me a great deal, and because of science I have developed a critical mind that has allowed me to sort of keep questioning everything, and I mean that everything, because I've looked everywhere, and for myself find some rationality in a very irrational world. Because as a professional working, I found out nobody has the answer to anything. Basically, it's not like a bad thing in a way. There are a lot of people trying, and that's the good thing. There are a lot of good people trying really hard to help other people. But in my own experience, good intentions just don't work. And that's all they are, good intentions. And keep doing, like, sort of keep giving help. Just the idea of it's good intentions, right, doesn't really help anybody, and could be very dangerous. So I had a lot of my frustrations in my personal experience, but mostly I want to talk about what made me better and what helped me. And I want to do that in a sort of safe way for myself. So calling myself a wizard is one way of not being taken too seriously, and to sort of distinct myself from being a doctor, because I don't want to give you medical advice or professional advice or scientific advice. I really just want to talk about the perspective of the person's feeling it. And I've learned in practice, and it's my hope that in being honest and sharing my side of things, I can help other people figure it out a little bit better, as I have. Now, all the magic stuff, like that, it's of course a big part of being a wizard, is it does have, there's a logic to it. Let's leave all the philosophy, spirituality, beliefs, religion aside. I could talk about that for hours. Like I'll gladly talk about that, and maybe I will. But I just want to talk about the logical side. Why is it helpful? And very, like, shortly, the way I found the answers out is to say, like, through my education and through my own personal experience, going to therapies, the things that worked were very unexpected, and they were all very, like, alternative ways in the end. And the point really is that I found little bits of things that worked, and there were always very logical reasons why it would work that I could sort of correlate with today's scientific approach. Like, so it never got in the way of my professional opinion or what I was learning until a bit later. Let me tell you what did improve for me. So the depressions are gone. I have a handle on these things. I feel better about myself. I like myself. I have actually sometimes loved myself. I went from loathing myself, looking for all kinds of things that are wrong with me, to admiring myself. Very, very naturally. I let go of a lot of anger meanwhile. Anger was a huge problem, and a lot of it is gone. There's an eternal pull in me. There was a hole, an emptiness. A lot of people will know what I'm talking about. And for a large part that is gone. Or when it arises, same with the depression, because they do sort of, they are the same sometimes it's a different thing. It's a weird field of poetry, but it's so much better. I just, like, I get emptiness, but now it's emptiness in a sense that it's silence, and bad things are gone, and there's a sort of peace, and although I'm still looking for some stability in my life and building, like, those things, that is what I basically had to do, is go back inside myself to the fundamentals of everything, the building blocks, the belief system I had built that made me experience the world in such a negative way, and make it worse, being in sort of spirals. Now, my road to recovery, as I said, has been very unorthodox. Like, I'll try to, like, it went from, I think, mindfulness, meditation, to drugs, to, like, tripping on different things. MDMA was a big part of it. Like, I'm not saying use drugs, but for me it was such a fucking eye-opening experience. It changed my life forever. And mostly because I was doing it so awarely. I did it at a very late age, and it was sort of like the last pieces of the world I hadn't tried. So I like sort of did it from a nothing to lose point of view, but also from a very much like, I just want to have some fun. When I decided in my life, like, my life is so bad, everything feels so bad, fuck it, I'm just gonna have fun, because either I can spend my whole day worrying about it, or I can just focus on having fun. Now you don't have to become irresponsible and hurt people around you, but if the choice is, like, enjoy something or worry about it, I took enjoy it really out of a sort of, it's the only thing I have left to do. And then I did drugs, and it changed my life, and then other things came into play, and because I was so aware, and because I had done my studies, which made me like have a very, very critical and mind about like I could look at things from different points of view. I could look at things from a scientific point of view. What do they know? How are they describing it? And the things what like how do they know the things they know, which is very important with a lot of these drugs. And then I could look at what patients were telling me, all their stories, all their experiences, how they were using it, like the patterns that I saw. And then I could use my own point of view. And I wrote a lot during this period. I just wrote down what I was thinking, how I was feeling during and after very well, and I could sort of compare what my brain is doing. And that learned for like, because I already experienced so much depression and I had seen it become better and I had this sort of up and down recovery, I could really, there was one thing I really sort of learned that everything fit together is you are not your thoughts, and your thoughts are sort of, you don't have that much control over them. They're very automatic inside you. It's like a translator you have on, and you start, and from a young age you put in these sort of auto corrections or these sort of fast phrases, like you don't like away from keyboard in AFK. So you put all these like auto commands in and these reflexes and this hierarchy, and it sticks, even though they don't match with the world outside you anymore, and you still use them. And that's why expressing, talking, writing is so important, because actually saying the words out loud will make you hear that, oh, that doesn't sound right at all when I say it out loud, and you can correct them, and you do get peace inside. Now, the second part and I want to get into right now really quickly is something that I do believe in, and that I think is the basis of everything that got me better, is something I started doing for myself slowly, and then I found sort of connections in the world that from people that were teaching this or doing this. Now, a big example, I have to name it because it did help me so much, and it did sort of it gave me a green light for what I was doing for myself in a very positive way, because I was so afraid of my own thoughts and mind, and I was always so afraid of getting caught into them, like getting lost, that I fought them a long time. And it was so busy in my head and there was so much war that I had to turn to things to mute that down, because it was hellish. And that's something that I could relate to my patients with, who came in with like going crazy in their thoughts, having suicidal thoughts because of it. I just know as any other like what that's like, what you're stuck in, and I could sort of talk them down to it, like a little bit, because I'm not going to solve anybody's problems by one conversation. That's a different topic. The point that I'm making is there is this way of looking at your brain which is very important. It is that every thought is valid and important. And you have to start looking at every thought you have as if it were spoken by a person in a room, a real person, and see how you would react to that, how you would treat that, and how you do with the thoughts in your brain. And start talking to these thoughts as if they were a real person in the room. And for me, what I did to get some peace in my head, because with the mindfulness and the meditations, I got some sort of consciousness going, like awareness, what is happening, why is it happening? And I started making this a room, sort of a house, but I just saw one room, and every time I heard a voice in my head, and I mean my own voice, but I mean sort of a side or an emotion or something talking, I would be like, okay, I saw it in the room, and I did that very exaggerated, like I made it like, let's say, like in the car, and I'm sort of, something inside is me like, I want to kill everybody. I would make them really into this demon lord, pure evil, like destruction thing, just to get the emotion really embellished. But I did make it in the room, and the rule was everybody in that room is safe, no matter how bad the words are they're saying, no matter how awful they are to the rest of us. Everything in that room is safe. But I also made a balcony where they could not go and I could go to get peace, and that really helped me sometimes. And I always wondered why that worked for a long time. But looking back, it's very simple, because I actually had made a negotiation for the first time with myself. A peaceful negotiation where I was like, look, this is neutral zone. Everybody can talk here, everybody's important, nobody will be diminished or has to go. But I have the safe space. And it happened. And with the course of time, a lot of these, like, the characters were very fluid in my head. I think other people will have more fixed characters. In my head, it was very fluid. Every day it could be different. Sometimes there were 60 in there just to emphasize the busyness. And sometimes one voice could have, there were more people. Like, you know, like if it's a large part of me that feels that way, I would represent it as the majority in the room. But every time with this exaggerated tone, which made me, for the first, not take it so seriously, and second of all, like have a bit more of a light back and forth going, just to open the dialogue. And what I actually did is I journaled like crazy, and every voice had a sort of color, and I would just write, like I would say, hey, hi, how you doing? Not so well, asshole. It's like, whoa, 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 with the big words. And in the other verse, like, what? You are an asshole. Like you've been ignoring me for 3 weeks. And I would write. And the beautiful thing you discover is, every time I did it, there was a peaceful resolution. And the voice is gone. Or there's peace in my head. And I would feel a lot better. Every time. Every fucking time. And yeah, it took me a lot of stamina and a lot of perseverance to keep doing that, because it's not that simple. It's really like peeling the layers of an onion. And what you will find is, if you go down this road, you will find a lot of happiness and new feelings. You'll also find a lot of crying. And that's really normal. Crying is really good. And that's a weird thing to say, but coming from somebody who has suffered depression, crying is really good. Depression is dying. It's really dying. It's time standing still and you feel like you're rotting and nobody sees and nothing flows. It's like being too hot and there's no wind all the time, and the pressure is increasing and there's this buzzing in your head all the time. Nothing happens. Crying is really great. Crying makes things flow, makes the wind blow, makes you sleep at night. So that's an exercise that I started doing, talking to these voices. And after, like, I'll tell you a little bit extra, in this house for me, there came a moderator. And for me it went like, that was baby Jeff, that was my child self. I put him in that house and he became the boss, because it became very clear that that was a part of me that I lost and I had to get back bad. And that part needed a lot of growing up, but also a lot of, it was the moderator and it was the boss, because every part agreed to that. Every part would listen to that part. That, like, the child me had purity, so it had neutrality, and it also stood up every time for parts that were not being heard. And no matter how good I got at this, there were still always little voices that I just pushed aside, and it takes a lot of digging to get out of that. But for me, it has brought me happiness. And it changed my life, it changed me, it changed how I feel, and all for the better. And it also has put more challenges on my path that I didn't see coming, but in the end are very logical things. Now, a third part that I really want to get into really quickly, and that's why also I want to do the magical stuff, is because, okay, like, we are emotions more than we are our thoughts. Emotions are just evolutionary first. They're the basis of our being. They're why we are. They they are our primary navigation. Our the top of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, that's all translation. That's a computer. That's a navigation system. That is a memory system. Look back in time and whatnot. And this is important to understand that I think more than half, but I have no idea, a big part of what we see, of what we hear, of the image we make in our brain, because we're using all our senses, getting this information, and we all know it's like it's like electrical impulses. So it's data. We get data in our brain and it makes an image. Okay? A lot of that is filled in by your brain, what it expects to see. It's not what it's actually seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. It expects something and it fills it in because your brain is smart and it tries to get things done fast and multitask. So it fills in the gaps because I can walk past some trees here and my brain is not going to keep checking like how far is this, is this still a tree, is this still a tree, is this still a tree? No, because all of my experiences have taught me that trees usually stand still and they will still be there even if I don't look. So in my brain that's filled in automatically all the time. Now that means we can be tricked a lot more by our brain than we want to believe, and there are enough videos with optical illusions that explain this, where they actually change things in the room while you're looking at it and you still don't see. And this is really important to understand because our connection to people really suffers from this, because there are so many assumptions and so many filling in going on that we are doing that we're not even aware of. And that damages us because basically we're not living in the real world, we're living in our own world, and we're reinforcing this all the time by the things we see, by what we expect to see, and by not testing it with reality. So the reality is subjective, and especially forget if that is actually true. There's a fucking car coming again. I hate this. I have to do more magic now. So where were we? Reality is subjective. You choose what you see, and also you choose what you want to see. And this brings me to a big part that you just need to accept, and then I think nobody of us can really get around, is that there is a subconscious part of us that rules our lives a lot more than we would like it to. And no, we all have this. Then otherwise we wouldn't have this internal conflict. Why would we want one thing but we can't have it and feel bad about it? Or why do we do things while we want other things? Why do we hurt other people when we know it's wrong? Why do we drink when we know we've had enough? Why do we smoke when we know it does nothing for us except damage our lungs? I smoke, by the way, so don't feel bad. It's okay. There are so many contradictions inside us, and there are so many weird impulses inside us that we just don't understand. It's called the subconscious, and it is real. And learning how to work with it will do amazing things to you. Interesting, I always thought was Freud, one of the founders of our talk about psychology, because he did a lot of brave things where he was very straightforward, and not everything that he came up with was right, but at least he was sort of putting something out there and saying, look, this is what I actually see happening, and sort of working with what I see actually gives results. And I don't think what you have to understand is this man was so fucking curious. He wanted to know that I think when he had patients, he asked them everything. He went so deep into their symbolism and into looking behind the words. What are they meaning? The double meaning of things and the layered things. And there's so much magic happening there. And he had some phenomena that he couldn't really explain. And one of them is that there's this sort of weird thing going on where some people just seem to have more bad luck than others. And beyond statistical possibility, like randomness, they just had a lot more accidents and annoying shit happened to them. And Jung also really describes something interesting, and I like this part because I'm really like a mythology buff. That sounds wrong. I read a lot of mythology, and I really like this fantasy stuff. But by the way, that's also the reason why I do magic, is I just love fantasy. I'm video games, sci-fi, aliens, robots, magic, bring it on. Jung describes this thing called psychopomp. And psychopomp is something from mythology, and it's actually, I think it's basically anything that assists the dead going to the underworld, or assists the transaction between the underworld and the living world. That's a psychopomp. Now Jung uses this to describe the way the subconscious talks to us. Now, like, let's say that we are all connected and that everything is one. Let's just say that this entire thing is the projection of one something that plays all the parts itself. Now, for us to be individual, we can't know everything from the whole, because we wouldn't be able to play the part convincingly, basically. So there's the shadow zone, or like a small wall where we can't see between the collective consciousness or the subconsciousness and our consciousness, so that we can be an individual. And because we can't see, like we can't have a clear image of this, or it would sort of warp our experience or our part, the subconscious talks to us by other means. And that's where it becomes interesting, and that's where it becomes therapeutically very, very interesting, is it talks to us through songs, through numbers, through imagery, through colors, through feelings, through deja vus, through dreams, through all kinds of weird mumbo jumbo that we don't really understand. But starting to pay attention to this, to like, okay, this ties into the previous part. Your brain sees what it wants to see, and your subconscious can play with that. And you really don't have to underestimate this, because if you've taken some psychedelic stuff, or LSD, I think does it the most, or does it shows it really well, is it shows you how unstable all the data is you're getting. When you see lines in a room, it's all shaking, and that's because that's how you're perceiving things, and your brain normally makes it a solid line for you. It just decides there's the wall, and when you get closer to it or you need it, you'll discover better information through your distance in the wall. But you don't actually exactly have a good image of where the wall is, and you know that because if you go stand in a room, you look at the wall, and then you close your eyes, and you try to walk to the wall and stop exactly before it, because you know where it is in your head, right? That's a problem. You will hit yourself bad, or you will be afraid, because you just don't know. So this data is very, very flexible, and you actually choose, so you can have a still image and you can move on. And we choose to see some colors more than others. We choose to hear words some more than others. Like when you listen to a song and suddenly one line pops into your head, suddenly you're listening for one line. That means something. For you personally, it means something. It could mean something very trivial, but it means something. And that's my point. Everything has a meaning. Asking why non-stop actually gives you answers that help you. It doesn't lead to an endless path of more whys, no. It actually leads to you understanding yourself and improving yourself and getting what you want. It really works. But that's my personal experience, and I don't want anybody to just believe me on that. The most I want is for people to start thinking. And what I hope to do is to sort of like get people to sort of think about things they may have not thought about before, and may be open to things that could help them. And also, if you really think about the symbolic nature of everything, and I think this is what a lot of journalists naturally uncover. When you journal a lot and you have a diary and you scribble and you draw and you use colors and you just are free in that, very free flowing, you will see patterns emerge. You will suddenly see like hey, this came, like I've been actually drawing this symbol for like the last 3 weeks, and suddenly this becomes relevant in my life. Or I've been actually like the time where I start writing is getting pretty peculiar. Or you see yourself using colors in some periods more than others. And it's don't make it into a big deal, but start noticing these things, because it will tell you so much of how your brain works, and also it will free you from a lot of mental anxiety where you are perceiving the reality as a lot more negative than it actually is. And it's all emotions. The subconscious is trying to get your emotions to talk to you, which is your primary navigation system. So if you're ignoring it, that's a problem for you, because the essence of you is saying do something, and then the periphery is stopping it. It makes no sense, and it gets very ugly. So your subconscious is trying to talk to you, and using magic or any kinds of alternative way that gets you to listen to it helps you. And for me, it's I want to make videos, have fun, play around with magic, maybe dress up, maybe get a little crazy with it, just to have a conversation about mental health, how to get better, how to have a better life. And don't follow my advice, don't listen to me, just ask some questions. And if you want to get better, if you want to get happier, challenge your mind, because it will lead you to some unexpected things. And it doesn't have to be magical, it doesn't have to be religious, but it gets pretty cool. Even though it's like a lot of the magical, miraculous things that happen to me, I can still explain scientifically. At the time they were happening, it was pretty freaking magical. And in essence, for me, I found peace in myself, and I love myself now. And that's a weird thing to say, but coming from where I came from, it's such a magical, miraculous thing that I don't know. I don't need anything more than to keep going on this route, because it keeps helping me and it keeps being right, and it also does not contradict everyday life in any way, and in fact it makes it better. So I hope to share my experience, my thoughts, and maybe it will help somebody, maybe it will get somebody thinking, maybe somebody laughing. That's it. And I'm a wizard, because it's cool.